Hello everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thank you for joining me for a Skid Row album ranking. The band itself formed in New Jersey in 1986 and ultimately became one of the biggest glam metal bands of that era from the late 80s and early 90s. And so now here we are, after 16 long years of waiting since their last studio album, Revolutions Per Minute, the band is making a triumphant return with their brand new studio album, The Gang's All Here. And I thought, what would be better than to do an album ranking of all 6 studio albums, counting down the catalog from this legendary band. So join me for that. But before we dive into it, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this, with a Skid Row album ranking, including all 6 studio albums that the band has released to date. So let's kick things off. At number 6, coming in, we've got Revolutions Per Minute from 2006, at the time 5th studio album. Ultimately became the last one to feature Johnny Solinger, who was the vocalist that took over for Sebastian Bach. This is also the only one to feature drummer Dave Gara. And what was cool about this album, and maybe one of the only things in my opinion, was that it was produced by Michael Wagner, who returned after having done the 2 first albums by Skid Row, the self-titled and Slave to the Grind. But I have to say, this album here never clicked with me. It's why it's coming in the position of number 6. And it's almost one of those albums I simply just exclude. I'm completely baffled by the album because of, in my opinion, all the different missteps on it. Sort of like they just threw a bunch of different things at the wall to see what would stick. I mean, we've got the straight up, rock. We've got this sort of glam metal style and the heavier style from Slave to the Grind. But we've got punk. We've got some like hardcore style. We've got some country on here. We've even got some Irish folk music on this thing. It just really sort of baffled my mind. There didn't seem to have a real direction for the album. It's one of the albums I continue to try to go back to sort of fall in love with, but I just can't. So it is sitting at position number 6. All right, coming in at number 5, this might be surprising to some of you, but Subhuman Race from 1995. 3rd studio album, last to feature the original lineup, and of course Sebastian Bach. Everybody has been screaming to have him back ever since, but it is what it is. This album here, same thing with like Revolutions Per Minute, really baffled me when it came out. It was so much heavier than anything the band had done prior. But then every one of Skid Row's albums are different and have a different sound. But at that particular time, we had the debut, which was a more glam metal approach, and then Slave to the Grind, which kind of stripped that away, got the band a bit heavier. And then this one here just really stripped it away. But the thing that is always held me back on this album is that a lot of the songs sound the same. They're in that sort of down-tuned, dirgy sort of a sound. The one saving grace here are the vocals of Sebastian Bach. But even at that point, there's points where he gets into this sort of scream, this guttural kind of singing that isn't the beautiful style that he is known for, even when doing the heavier stuff. And he gets even past that. And it's the thing that has pulled this album down for me and why it is falling in at position 6 or number 5. But even with that, I will say that this album has grown on me quite a bit since it first came out. I was very much not into it at the time, and it's turned around, and I really debated on whether it was going to come in at number 5 or number 4, but ultimately it falls at number 5. Coming in at number 4, we've got Thick Skin. Coming out in 2003, this was a reunion album at the time, 4th studio album as well. First to feature new vocalist Johnny Solinger at the time, who was taken over for Sebastian Bach. And boy, did Johnny have big shoes to fill for this album here. This one here too, I mean, the band had to prove that they could continue on without the original lineup, without Sebastian Bach up front. And it was also the first one to feature new drummer Phil Varone taking over for Rob Alfuso. Phil Varone coming from Saigon Kick, so that was kind of cool to get him in the lineup there. This album here, I have to say, loved it since it came out, and it has also grown on me and held up ever since, which is why it inches past Subhuman Race to come in at the number 4 position. There's a lot of great songs on here and a lot of throwback style songs as well. New Generation opens this up and it sounds like something Skid Row would do right from the get-go. Very cool kind of play with the guitar and what they're doing with it. But while this album has a lot more melodic rock style songs on here, that may be the only downfall to this thing. It's not as heavier as the 3 previous albums, not as rock. But the songs and the structure of the songs and what they are very, very good, and in my opinion have held up well over time. Therefore, that's why this album is coming in at number 4. All right, coming in at number 3 here, the brand new 2022 Gangs All Here 6th studio album. And this one here, I know maybe some of you guys are really kind of surprised at how high it has shot up already, and I don't think that's just because it is a brand new album here. I've given this thing a number of listens. I've had it for several days already, and I've sat with it, and this thing right out of the gate has blown my mind at how good it is. And it's really shooting up the charts in terms of the best of 2022, in my opinion. Again, we'll have to wait and see how it holds out come the end of the year. But this one here, first one to feature new vocalist Eric Gronwall taking over for ZP Thart, who never recorded with the band, at least a full-length album, and taking over for Johnny Solinger, who was the last vocalist to record with the band. So this one here also has drummer Rob Hammersmith coming in, been with the band for 12 years, but had not recorded a full-length studio album. So he was on the 2 EPs, United World Rebellion Chapters 1 and 2. We're not covering the EPs here, but interesting that we really got 2 new members on this album here. And it sounds great from start to finish. It's all killer, no filler. There isn't a song on here I don't like. It's just solid Skid Row sounding music. The music sounds like Skid Row. The vocals sound like Skid Row. Eric Gronwall does an amazing job. And ultimately, this album here fits very nicely for me in between the debut self-titled album and Slave to the Grind in terms of the style and structure of it. And I love that about it. You kind of get the best of both worlds with this album here. So I'm blown away. I'm amazed. I love this album. I can't wait to get more from them and see how they continue on and what they do for follow-up music going forward. But this one here, brand new, already coming in at number 3 for the band. All right, coming in at number 2 for me, Slave to the Grind, 1991, 2nd studio album produced by Michael Wagner, who, as I mentioned at the start of this, had also produced the Revolutions Per Minute and debut. First heavy metal album to chart at number 1. That was a big thing about it. It's, held that as a key, sort of status point. So, charting at number 1 on the Billboard 200 album chart, nothing to sneeze at there. Sold 134,000 copies in its opening week. To achieve that, ultimately go on to sell 2 million copies, nowhere near as big as the debut, but at the time and as a follow-up, of course, did not fall flat on its face, doing really well. The difference between this one and the debut is how much heavier this was here. The first one was the full-on glam metal sound. This one here grew. It showed the band expanding, trying out new stuff, getting heavier, doing a bit of punk and things of that nature with it. So it's very cool to have the band do that and to see them be successful at that. I think it's one of the reasons that the band has been able to maintain as big a following as it has, is that they've never made the same album twice. This was the start of all of that. All right, and coming in at number 1, I think it's no surprise to a lot of you, the self-titled debut album from 1989, produced by Michael Wagner also. Would peak at number 6 on the Billboard 200 album chart, but would go on to sell 5 million copies, one of the biggest all-time selling albums from the glam metal album, or glam metal era, I should say. And this one here, no shortage of amazing hit songs. 18 in Life, I Remember You, of course the big, all-time anthem, Youth Gone Wild. But there was a lot of cool deep album cuts on this that became really big radio numbers. In fact, the reason that I ultimately went out and bought this album album were for songs like Piece of Me and Here I Am. Songs that got played lots on the radio but were never released, formally as singles or music videos and things of that nature and stuff. So to have an album that its deep cuts became as popular, some of them became as popular as the hits that came off of the album, I think says a lot for the album, and ultimately for me, why this album is coming in at the #1 position. And so there you go. There is all 6 of Skid Row's albums ranked for you guys. Leave your comments and let me know your thoughts. I'm sure you've got opinions on what should have come in at #1 or slight rigor, jostling around of the way that these are and so forth. But all in all, that's my ranking. Hopefully you enjoyed it. As related videos, I will leave a link to the brand new album, The Gang's All Here. I've done a full review of that. You can get into that and see what I think about that, but check the description for a link on that if you're interested. And certainly if you've enjoyed this video, consider sharing it out on social media. Help spread the word for both my channel and of course for Skid Row. We would all appreciate it. Take care everyone. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.